Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. Today, we're discussing a giant of the deep. It is the Rolex Oyster Perpetual Deepsea Sea-Dweller Deep Blue, reference 11660. The Neo 666 with James Cameron-inspired deep blue dial can be seen and purchased on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right-hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this watch, with additional accessories included in the sale, high-resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pricing details for this Deepsea Deep Blue. Now, this is truly the Leviathan among contemporary sea dwellers, and I should clarify before we get any deeper that this is the 2014 to 2017 model. It is not the 12660. So we're looking at caliber 3135 and old school lug and bracelet proportions. The watch is an absolute beast, but shockingly it's wearable. Now, this one's actually sized down via the sliding clasp to fit my wrist, and you can see how solid and secure it is. It's big, but that's the look. This watch isn't really designed to look proportional. In the fashion of a true utility watch, visibility is priority one and every other priority is a distant second. So the watch is easy to read. It's also fairly comfortable. The timepiece is big though, 44 millimeters across the round of the case. That's not including crown or crown guards. You can see in profile, this is a robust watch. 17.7 millimeters thick. It only sits a little bit lower because of the cupped back. Nevertheless, it's not going to clear any kind of dress sleeve. It may clear a jacket cuff, but only if you're a bigger dude. Now, from lug to lug, it is broad, 52.5 millimeters across the wrist, substantial there, and then you add the solid end links to the bracelet, and we have a truly immense 55.7 millimeter span across the wrist. You can see those end links are no joke, even though Rolex does its best ergonomically to tuck them within the lugs. But the watch does fit and it does sit securely. If you want a watch that is the best in the business from a utilitarian standpoint with a little bit of artistic flair, impeccable pedigree, and bulletproof construction, you want this watch. Let's talk a little bit about the bracelet. The timepiece does feature a 21 millimeter lug spacing, but even on the first generation Deep Blue, you really don't want to put this watch on a strap because it has Rolex's most fascinating clasp, and you will want to retain that along with the solidity of the all-solid link bracelet. Rolex mutes the appearance of the bracelet on the Deepsea. Polished on the flank, there's no polished center link, but make no mistake, that signature of the premium Rolex watches is missing only for utilitarian purposes to minimize glare. There's absolutely no lack of quality or attention to detail in the clasp, where the watch shows its true colors as a flagship, fully finished, fully polished. This is where an entry-level model would be media blasted. Now, the clasp is a monster. You have the latest version of Rolex's flip lock, and we're actually going to flip out two features. One is the slider, and the second is the flip lock extension. So you have glide lock and flip lock, but this is not glide lock as employed on the Submariners. This is a system, and I may as well throw the watch back on the wrist at this point because it's best demonstrated as Rolex intended. But this is a system that's designed to allow you to adjust the bracelet while it's still on your wrist. This is where it really sets itself apart from what else is available in the Rolex catalog. You can move in and you can move out while the watch is still on your wrist, thus allowing fine-tuning during activities with no need to remove the watch. That's a smart feature because in an aquatic environment, pulling off your watch to make an adjustment means you've got a great chance of losing that watch overboard. Keeping it on the wrist is good, sound reasoning on Rolex's part, and with the price point of this watch, originally about $12,500, there was margin to work this kind of engineering into the bargain. You'll also note that the flush-fitting clamshell is completely recessed within its own little slot within the clasp. So even the small details, the kerf underneath the crown to allow me to dig in my fingernail, the recess on both sides and along the top, this little well for the clamshell, Rolex sweated the details. Even from an aesthetic standpoint, it's beautifully engineered, but it is also objectively beautiful. Let's call it a beautiful brute, to use an expression often applied during the 1950s to top-of-the-line Chryslers with the original 392 Hemi. The watch on my wrist is the super case, and it's the super case in super size. We can get a little closer now that the watch is off the wrist. The sheer sides, the squared off lug ends. This is a watch that is designed to communicate the extremity of its capabilities. It's like a little diving bell or missile submarine for your wrist. Of course, the helium escape valve at 9 o'clock, that's there for those who dive in saturation environments where you may go very deep and breathe an exotic gas mixture. So that's there. So if the pressure inside exceeds 2 to 3 bars beyond the external pressure, it will actually allow the helium that seeps in to the watch during a saturation dive to move out without blowing out the crystals or the seals. Not something you're likely to need, but then again, this watch is entirely about overkill. And unlike some watches that are festooned with diamonds and two-tone, it's a functional kind of overkill. Engineering, I can appreciate that. You'll also note that the knurling of the bezel is deep and sharp, and you want that because you can really dig your fingers into it. Because of the depth and the purchase, you know that if your hands are wet, sweaty, or gloved, you're going to easily get a purchase on this bezel and be able to manipulate it. It doesn't move too easily, but it does not fight you. Now, line the luminescent pearl up with the minute hand. You have an impromptu 0 to 60 minute count-up timer, easy to read in radial array. I always prefer this to a chronograph like the Daytona, because quite simply, it's just easier to read a minute hand against a radial scale. You also have Rolex's Cerachrome ceramic. So the ceramic insert effectively is scratch resistant as the sapphire, and everything that is a metallic calibration, index, or numeral, that's actually a platinum deposit within the wells, the recesses of the bezel, so it's designed for the long haul. There will be a lume shot at the end, so stay tuned. Now, inboard, you can find that there is actually a little plinth on which the 5.5 millimeter thick sapphire sits. So it sits on that little ring-shaped support that says original gas escape valve ring lock system. Rolex gives you more of everything, including text, with this watch, and it creates a straight-through assembly, almost like a set of metal donuts. So the titanium caseback, a rare example of titanium employed on a Rolex, is physically part of a top-to-bottom bracing system that starts with the sapphire and continues almost like a drum surrounding the entire movement, braced on the opposite side by that titanium caseback. So you have this ring lock system that just acts as a clasp, holding the entirety of the watch together from top to bottom. So pressure on the back meets pressure applied on the front when the watch plunges to its maximum depth rating. And Rolex does test these watches to their rated depth. There is some incredibly brutal looking pressure testing equipment in Rolex that is employed on the Deepseas. This isn't simply a watch that's water tested. This is a watch that is tested to its rated capabilities. Inboard, you can see some of the artistic flair of this model. In late 2014, Rolex paid tribute to its endorser and, truth be told, genuine enthusiast James Cameron, the filmmaker who descended to the Challenger Deep of the Mariana Trench. His submarine was the Deepsea Challenger, so the watch becomes the Deepsea Sea-Dweller. Now you can see the gradient. It's pretty literal. From the surface to the bottom, from blue to black. You can see the Deepsea signature, which is the same color as the submarine. All of the indices feature blue Rolex chromalite, and then the indices themselves, as well as the hands, are white gold, so an upscale finish. It is a lacquered gradient, so beautifully glossy. One of the features I love most about this style is the absence of the Cyclops eye. I feel that it's a little bit more elegant, and one of the few measures by which the Deepsea actually surpasses the elegance of watches like the GMT Master and the Submariner. I can also tell you that there's a little bit of a two-step going on this dial as Deepsea migrates from the top of the dial on the standard Deepsea Sea-Dweller to 6 o'clock, and you can often see on the internet people will make counterfeits of this watch, and you'll see Deepsea above the hands as if they just colorized a standard version of the watch, minted it out of a coastal China chop shop, and put it on the internet. Well, I can tell you that in the hand, you will never confuse a Deepsea for a counterfeit, any more than you would confuse a teddy bear for a grizzly bear. They are just that different by virtue of the heft and the substance, but it is funny to see people screw up something as simple as a dial. Now, inboard, we're going to use some nautical terminology here. The watch is fairly standard Rolex sports watch, caliber 31-35. It has the helium escape. It has the outrageous 3,900 meter depth rating, but fundamentally it's the same thing you'll find in a Datejust. Automatic winding, 48-hour power reserve, 28,800 vibrations per hour, bidirectional winding system, so very smooth, doesn't have a rotor wobble like a Valjoux 7750. Does feature hacking seconds, does feature a quick set date, does feature a full balance bridge and a free sprung index for shock resistance, a Breguet overcoil hairspring with parachrom blue alloy composition for respectively concentric beating in any position, and anti-magnetism, and it is a COSC certified Swiss chronometer, although Rolex does go above and beyond the chronometer certification. Rolex will take these watches, get the chronometer cert on the bare movement, because that's how the COSC test is run. They will put the movement back into their watch. They will then regulate it to ensure that as an assembled consumer product, it exceeds the COSC standard. So that's Rolex going above and beyond. Everything from their proprietary 904L steel to the fact that they stamp and finish their own cases and bracelets. This is an entirely manufactured product. And if I can give one shout out to a feature largely unheralded, but surprisingly relevant to landlubbers, it is that 5.5 millimeter thick, entirely flush and recessed crystal. It's below the plane of blows, and because it is so thick, I found that it's almost as useful for owners who are tough on their watch as it is for actual divers, as a much thicker sapphire is far more difficult to fracture and shatter. So even if you never take the plunge with this watch, the extra engineering and specification that goes into its composition will pay dividends. You can see and you can purchase this Deepsea Deep Blue on our website. And we're back with the Rolex Deepsea Deep Blue. This is the 11660. It may be big, but it moves at the speed of light. Rolex Chromolite Blue Lume. You can see how the bezel easily lines up with the minute hand for impromptu timing. The Mercedes hour hand, you can even see the bulb of the seconds hand making its progress around the dial. See it in its entirety by the light of day on our website.